The horror story, The Shadows of Villisca. In the small, quiet town of Villisca, Iowa, nestled among endless fields of corn and rolling plains, the 9th of June, 1912, began like any other summer day. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, and the townsfolk went about their routines: farmers tending to crops, children playing in the dusty streets, and families gathering for supper. But as night fell, an unspeakable darkness crept into the town, one that would stain its history forever. The Moore family, Josiah, Sarah, and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, lived in a modest 2-story home on a quiet street. They were well liked, a pillar of the community. Josiah ran a successful implement business, and Sarah was known for her kindness and involvement in the local Presbyterian church. That Sunday, they'd attended a Children's Day service at the church, a joyful event filled with hymns and laughter. 2 young friends of the Moore children, Lena and Ina Stillinger, aged 12 and 8, joined them afterward, invited to spend the night. The group returned home around 9:30 p.m., the children giggling as they climbed the narrow stairs to bed. The house settled into silence, the only sounds the creaking of old wood and the faint rustle of wind through the open windows. But someone was watching. In the dead of night, as the clock ticked past midnight into the 10th of June, a figure slipped through the shadows of Villisca. No one saw them approach the Moore house. No one heard the soft thud of boots on the porch, or the faint scrape of an axe being lifted from the backyard coal shed. The intruder moved with purpose, a phantom in the darkness, their breath steady and their intent clear. They entered through the unlocked back door no one locked their doors in Villisca back then, and stepped into the stillness of the sleeping home. The first to fall were Josiah and Sarah, asleep in their bed on the first floor. The axe came down with brutal precision, shattering the peace of the night. Blood soaked the sheets, the walls, the floor. The killer didn't stop there. They climbed the stairs, the wooden steps groaning faintly under their weight, and entered the children's room. Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, aged 11, 10, 7, and 5, never woke up. Their small bodies were left broken, their innocent faces frozen in eternal sleep. Then, the intruder turned to the guest room, where Lena and Ina Stillinger lay. The axe fell again and again, until the house was a tomb. 8 lives extinguished in a matter of minutes. The killer didn't flee immediately. They lingered, as if savoring the carnage. They covered the mirrors with blankets, a strange ritual that baffled investigators later. They washed their hands in a basin, leaving bloody water behind. They even took a slab of bacon from the kitchen, an eerie detail that would haunt the townsfolk's nightmares. And then, as silently as they'd come, they vanished into the night. Morning broke over Villisca, and the horror was discovered. A neighbor, Mary Peckham, grew uneasy when the Moore house remained silent. No children playing, no Josiah heading to work. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. Peering through a window, she saw nothing but stillness. She called Josiah's brother, Ross Moore, who arrived and forced his way inside. What he found would scar him for life. Blood everywhere, bodies mutilated beyond recognition, and an oppressive silence that seemed to scream. The town erupted in panic. News spread like wildfire, and soon, Villisca was overrun with curious onlookers trampling the crime scene, desperate for a glimpse of the nightmare. The police were outmatched, their investigation sloppy and chaotic. They found the axe in the coal shed, its blade dulled from the ferocity of the attack. They found cigarette butts in the attic, hinting the killer might have waited there, watching the family below as they returned from church. But no clear suspect emerged. Suspicion fell on several men. Frank Jones, a local businessman and rival of Josiah Moore, was rumored to hold a grudge. Some whispered he'd hired a killer to settle the score. Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher with a strange obsession with the Moores, confessed to the crime years later, only to recant. His mental instability cast doubt on his words. William Blackie Mansfield, a drifter with a violent past, was linked to similar axe murders across the Midwest. But evidence was thin. The case grew cold, the killer's identity swallowed by time. But the horror didn't end with the murders. The Moore house stood empty, a grim monument to the tragedy. Years passed, and whispers of something unnatural. People claimed to hear children's laughter echoing from the empty rooms, even though no one lived there. Others saw shadows moving behind the windows, too small to be adults, too restless to be still. A local man swore he saw a figure in the attic one night, holding an axe, staring down at him with hollow eyes. By the 1930s, the house had a new owner, but they didn't stay long. They reported footsteps pacing the upstairs hall at night, doors slamming shut on their own, and a chilling cold that seeped into their bones. A family in the 1970s fled after their daughter woke screaming, claiming a girl in a white dress stood over her bed, whispering her name. Paranormal investigators flocked to Villisca, recording disembodied voices, soft cries, faint pleas, and, most chillingly, a deep, guttural laugh that seemed to come from nowhere. One recording captured a child's voice saying, "He's still here." Another picked up a man's voice muttering, "I did it," followed by the sound of an axe scraping against wood. Skeptics dismissed it as wind or imagination, but those who'd been inside the house knew better. The air felt thick, heavy with something unseen, something angry. Today, the Villisca Axe Murder House is a tourist attraction, preserved as it was in 1912. Visitors report feeling watched, their skin prickling as they climb the stairs. Some say they've seen the Stillinger sisters standing in the guest room, their white nightgowns stained with blood, their eyes wide and unblinking. Others claim to hear Josiah Moore's voice, begging for mercy that never came. The attic, where the killer may have waited, is the worst. People describe an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the walls themselves are closing in. The murders remain unsolved, a wound that never healed in Villisca's soul. Was it a vengeful rival, a deranged preacher, a wandering madman? Or did something darker take hold that night, something that still lingers in the house, feeding on the fear of those who dare to enter? The truth is lost to history, but the terror lives on, etched into the very boards of that cursed home. As the wind howls through the Iowa plains, carrying the faint echo of a child's cry, one question haunts every visitor. If you stand in the silence of the Moore house, will you hear the axe fall again?